Hi Vibha, can you see me?
Absolutely. Hi, Saloni. Very good to see you here. Guys, excited to have Saloni Doshi here on episode number 30 of House of Experts. My name is Vibha Kagzi, and I'm going to be your host today as we delve into the world of art curation and collection. And we have with us an expert on the subject, Saloni Doshi, who's the founder and director of Space 118, India's foremost art residency. She's been collecting art since she was a child. She comes from a family of well renowned collectors and has really carved a niche for herself in the space. She's additionally working on a book, which she's going to talk a little bit more about. She also is very encouraging towards artists, constantly holds exhibitions, and has a long standing relationship with several people in the art world. More than all her professional accolades, just wanted to say that Saloni is a very dear friend, very warm, welcoming, and always there for anyone who needs her help or her advice in any matter. So, Saloni, more than thank you to you for just being a really dear friend and accepting my invitation to come on the show. And thank you for being who you are. So, welcome to the show, Saloni.
I'm here because of you, Vibha. So
Okay, all right. So without much ado, going to just jump into our first question for today, which, so Saloni, as you know, at Reach IV, we focus on careers and education. And of course, especially in India, a lot of credit goes to our parents in our early years, for those sort of become the foundation years for us. So if you could just give us a sneak peek into your childhood. I know you have two siblings, you grew up in this beautiful family, but we want to hear it in your words. So what was your childhood like?
my mother insisted that we were raised with all the classical values. So I had to learn Bharatnatyam, a classical dance. I had to play the piano. We had to learn Hindustani classical vocals. And because my mother comes from Calcutta, I grew up with a very strong influence of Bengal school. In terms of going to museums, going to galleries. My uncle is a collector of the Bengal school. So I grew up with that. I think I was his favorite from a very young age. So I think it just so happened that, yeah, I mean, I was exposed to it from a very young age. But I think being introduced to the classical forms is something that my mother was very particular that we we were exposed to, including religious training. I mean, we're Jain, so we had a teacher teaching us not just our Jain paths, but also what they mean. And so we don't say it as is. We understand what we are saying, and we understand why we're praying. So for many years, we had a teacher who would teach us, what Jainism meant. So I think I had a lot of religious training as well as classical, I mean, training in the classical arts from a very young age. Of course, then we used to crib about it and hate it. Now I realize where it comes from.
Okay, terrific. So very early influences of learning dance and music. When did art happen? Was that a sort of a one-time experience? Was there someone you met? What was the turning point? When did art enter your life?
I think art was always in my life. I mean, we were also exposed to a lot of art and crafts. So I went to, oil painting classes in Calcutta. I even used to do a lot of sketching. And in crafts also, I mean, my mother exposed us to everything. We had to make rangolis every day. I remember I used to make them then out of colored, pencil shavings. We used to take pencil shavings and dye them and make rangolis out of them, or dye rice and make rangolis out of that. Dye even atta, and use that. Once I remember I made in school rangoli out of screw nails and screw, those keelas, but of different kinds, screws and keelas, and of all different textures, thick ones, thin ones. So it was a very mechanical rangoli. So I think it was always there. But I think, having said that, coming from a business family, I don't know why I was not encouraged, or Maybe because I was extremely bright academically, I, I sort of automatically I went into commerce, and then I never took up fine arts as a subject. And I think that is one of my biggest regrets, all my life, that I never took up fine arts as a subject in college. Yeah.
Okay, so early inclination towards art, you did not study it as a subject. I know you studied a little bit of media. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your educational background and sort of that journey. I know you hold two postgraduate degrees, but if you could just sort of, for the audience, just elaborate a bit about your education.
So my education in the media has been very strong. After I finished my double graduation from St. Xavier's College in Economics and Political Science, I did do a social communications media course at Sophia Polytechnic. I did a diploma, and then I did go to LSE in London School of Economics, and I did my MSc in media and communication. So I think that sort of helped a lot in terms of my entire background initially, in terms of my educational background. And I also did a master's from Bombay University in political science. So my entire background was in politics and media. And then I came back from London, and I joined Times of India, and I was there as a brand and product manager, managing all the group websites. So I was in charge of digitizing every publication into a website. In those days, I was known as the online girl, and nobody understood what I was doing. But obviously today, tables have turned and everything is online. But yeah, way ahead of the curve in terms of what I was doing then, and even what I'm doing in many ways now, or rather when I started my career in the arts.
Okay, terrific. So 6 years of a solid career, Times of India,
Yeah.
managing media, managing their properties, understanding the tech world. What happens then? How do you enter, into the space of art? How do you switch careers? How do you convince your family, and forget the family, more so yourself, that you want to make this sort of career transition? So what was that turning point for you?
Just before I went to London to study, I did a 9-month internship while I was doing my degree with Bombay University. I did a 9-month internship with the Oceans, the Fine Arts Auction House, and that was a turning point in my life. That was the only internship in Times of India. Was the only job I have ever done, but that was a turning point in my life because that exposed me to arts from Bengal, all over India, antiquities, contemporary, everything. I mean, my vocabulary in the arts changed, and I was a research. I was doing research when I was at Oceans. So because of my role there, I understood so much about the arts that, fortunately or unfortunately, I couldn't get it out of my system. So when I did come back and join Times of India, I realized that, what, I'm not with the arts, but what I do like now is I can collect it, and my initial salaries, I think my first 3 years, actually pretty much all the years I was there, but most of it went into buying art from a very, very young age, because that's when I really truly had the freedom to buy what I wanted to, and I did not have to ask my parents to pay 20,000 for a piece of paper that anybody can do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't look for the encouragement, or I wasn't discouraged either. I just decided to make it my own journey, and I started collecting from a very young age. So pretty much exactly the same time I started earning, which was at Times of India. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be around the age of what, 22, 23?
Yeah, about 24, I would say. Yeah, because
Okay.
I did about 2 master's degrees, and then I also did 2 more master's degrees. I did another diploma in art criticism and theory, and then I did another diploma in Indian art aesthetics. So that was very useful. One I did when I was in Times of India, and one I did after I quit Times of India, because they're very intensive courses. So I think that also helped me a lot in terms of understanding our own heritage, yeah.
So lots of education. It seems like you've constantly kept yourself upgraded through coursework, you've made sure that you're sort of continuously learning. That seems to be one of your themes.
I think I'll always be a student of life and
Hmm.
enjoy. I mean, I don't think one can ever know enough. Today, technology changes every day. I mean, from where did we start? I mean, landlines, we had like a regular phone, used to dial numbers like that. Today, we don't even care about a landline in our house. You know, we have to learn apps like Instagram and Facebook, and all these things are so important. So, if we don't change and if we don't learn, then how are we going to grow? You know what I mean? You have to adapt yourself.
Terrific. So constantly learning. Um, so 24 years old, you buy your first piece of art. Tell us a bit about it. Take us back to that scene. What did you buy, and what was that thought process like? What did you first lay your hands on?
I was in Hyderabad for a friend's wedding, and that I really used to get time to go to galleries in Bombay because I just started working. So actually, my initial purchases, is are all from all over India, but Bombay. Bombay was actually my last destination because you see, even when I shop for clothes or anything, at the end of the day, I do feel that I don't really get time when I'm in the city because this is a city that makes you work, so you're constantly working when you're here. You don't get time to do things other than that. And I was obviously very new in my job, so I didn't have that leeway to take time off. But at the same time, I feel like I used to travel a lot for friends' weddings or just to meet family, etc. And I do feel that I bought a Lakshma Gaud. I remember walking into a gallery, and there was this beautiful piece of an erotic woman. And I did feel that, coming from a regular, I mean, not so regular, but coming from the kind of family backgrounds we do, you do not see women with like full,
Yeah,
bosom or any of that, in a regular home. And I did find it very provocative and very evocative. Like today, it's lying around in my house and nobody even notices it. But
sure.
those days, it was a big thing for me to buy that work. I actually took it out of storage after many years when I finally had my own space. But that was my first art purchase. And it is very, I mean, and since then, every time I travel, I would go and see the local galleries in every city, and I would enjoy, um, their programs and join, their mailing list, and then sort of get ideas of what's going on. And yeah, and I started just collecting from there.
Okay, wow. That sounds like a fairly simple start. You're making it sound quite easy and accessible to for all of us who are not initiated into the arts. So you buy this first piece of art. Thereafter, you constantly learning, constantly traveling. I'm always curious to understand. Through all your travels and all these galleries you visited, what do you see? For the uninitiated, what do you see when you see a piece of art? If you had to break it down to the basics for some of us, how should we look at art? What do you look at?
Um, for me, I think because my eyes trained in terms of, like I said, because of I look at the composition firstly before anything. What is the composition, whether it's a photograph or whatever, what is in the frame, of the work. And that for me is very, very important. And then I look at materiality. I look at the message that the work is trying to communicate. And because contemporary art is about that, the message is, is everything. So contemporary art is no longer about, the artists really painting it themselves or doing anything by themselves, but it is about the idea behind it. And what I think in daily parlance, what you call conceptual art, because it's more conceptual vis-a-vis, you know um, I mean, art that requires physical labor. So I
Sure.
think for the message is very important and the composition is very important. And how that's relayed, which is in the form, the materiality, etc., that is very important after that.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So the composition, the materiality, and what is the sort of the messaging behind that piece of art? Okay, I have some comments here. Chrisanne says, very interesting, travel and collection of art. Thank you, Chrisanne. Oh, we have a question here from Abel who says, how expensive was that piece of art that you first bought, your first purchase?
I think it was for 40 or 50,000.
Okay, 40, 50,000.
Yeah.
So anyone looking to get a start, you can enter this space at that price point or slightly lower as well. Let's
Lower.
take.
That was a pretty decent size work of art, so it was a little expensive. Yeah.
Okay, okay. We have a question from a comment from Yasmin Gonzalez, who says you're so inspirational. Thank you, Yasmin, for that compliment for Saloni. Let's take this question here from Uf Mirchi, who says, what is the difference between buying art from a gallery versus an auction house? Okay, great. I actually wanted to touch upon this. So this is a great question.
You know, so galleries are your first point. They are the ones who really promote artists. They are the ones who give, birth to young talent. So looking at group shows, solo shows of young artists at galleries is very important. I think for young collectors who have price point in mind and do not know how to navigate the art world, one should only look at galleries. I think auction houses is, what is an auction? I mean, you auction something that you can't get ordinarily in the primary market, which is the gallery market, that you are ready to pay a premium for. That's why it's auction, because you're.
So are you saying the auction houses have sort of more exclusive collections that the galleries might not have?
That's what an auction is for, that you are auctioning things which are more exclusive, which is why you're paying a premium, because you can't get them ordinarily. So I feel like the reason why you would even go to an auction house is if I mean, today the role of an auction house is changing, but conventionally that's what an auction house means. So I feel like if you're starting with lesser budgets, one must look at galleries as the first point of contact. And if you're starting with a high budget and are only looking for signatures, or names that you're familiar with, which you may not be able to. Auction houses are a great place to buy from if you're looking for signature works and you're looking for names that you're familiar with, and and you have the money to buy, and you just want a place where you do not get cheated or any of that, and then you can just buy it from an auction house. But yes, if you're a young collector like me, galleries would be your primary place.
Your best bet. Okay, great.
An auction is called a secondary marketplace. A gallery is called a primary marketplace.
Okay, all right. Very interesting. Okay, and for again young art collector, how do they value art? How do I know whether I'm being fleeced? How do I know what to pay? How do you know? How do you know what to pay?
Well, how do I know that? Is a long answer. But how does one know in general? I think one must buy from galleries they're familiar with. Okay. I think trying to understand why you pay 700 rupees or 7,000 rupees or 70,000 rupees for a cup or a saucer, right? I mean, if it's pure gold, might be 70 lakhs also. So why you pay that, we don't know, right? You will pay anything if it has a label on it or not a label on it. I mean, it's the same thing. So I think for starters, everyone who's looking at buying art must buy from very credible places and galleries of repute, who've been around, even if they're young galleries and they haven't been around, but you know them, or you're following their programming or any of that. I don't think one should just buy blindly from just any place or just pick it up from the road. Of course you do that, but then you don't expect it to appreciate.
Sure.
You can buy from anywhere. I can buy from you. You can buy from me. I can also make an artwork, and so can you. But what I mean is, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about art that is of value and is valued as an artwork. Is always important to buy from good galleries or galleries with good reputation.
So you buy it from the gallery, but how would I know? Like, if I look at the amount the gallery has sort of pegged the piece of art at, how do I know if I'm getting a fair price? How does one judge? Are there sort of metrics out there? Is there some public data that I would study? Like, how do you value art?
There's nothing. This is no. There are values only for artists who have, who've been celebrated, or who've got a very extensive CV. But for younger artists, there is no value really. I think the value is in what you see. So what you see, you like it, and you're comfortable with the price, is what I would say. It's not like going to make you poor, and it's definitely not, going to be a pinch on your wallet. it's something that you would pay for a dress or a meal or a holiday, you know, depending on how much you like the work, then
Okay.
just treat it as one of those. That's it, you know.
Okay. So this is like a classic case of.
Then Razan, I don't need the moderns or the senior artists. Yes, there is. I mean, there is a metrics, and you can understand that better when you understand how to buy from auctions, etc. But yeah,
Okay. So sounds like a classic case of beauty lies in the art of the beholder,
yeah,
and sort of just basis what you see, what you perceive, that's the
correct.
value.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the value.
very interesting. But you also just talked about senior artists, well-renowned artists, sort of charging a premium. So as an art collector, how much importance do you give to the artist versus the work? Like, where are you on that spectrum? How important is it to you as to who created this piece of art versus just the sheer sort of beauty of that piece of work? Where are you on that spectrum?
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
I want to understand, like, do you distinguish between the art and the artist?
Artist, correct. So,
Yeah.
when I started collecting, I mean, I can't say collecting because I started buying art. I did many a times first buy and then meet the artist much later. In some cases, I would really like them, and in many cases, or rather, a few cases that I would not, I would not agree to what they say, or I would not agree to, them being a certain person and, portraying themselves as something else when they actually, would make their art, or rather, the art signifying something else. So it was much later, and I used to question this, to myself all the time, that how does one distinguish between the two? And can one get emotional about an artist and not about their practice? But, it is now, after almost 18 years of collecting as well as, being in the art world, I feel I can distinguish between the rice from the chaff, So I do know that you can't possibly link the two. You have to be
Okay.
able to distinguish, and you have to be able to cut the two out. So you can be a great artist, but a horrible
Not
person,
the,
and that's fine. And you can be a very nice person, but a horrible artist, and that's
okay.
all, you know. So
Okay. So you're saying you should sort of separate the two and sort of evaluate the
yeah.
two different sort of boxes. Okay. Terrific. That's very helpful. Thank you for giving us an overview of the art collection world. I want to shift gears because, Saloni, you wear so many different hats within this art space. Let's shift gears to your residency. Want to understand a bit more about Space 118, and just for starters, for the audience, what is Space 118? What do you guys do there?
In Space 118, so in the art world, when we talk, we drink wine, usually in the evening. At Space 118, we actually give studios and residencies to artists from India and all over the world. For the last 11 years, when I got into this, like I said, I was already working at Times of India and I'd started buying art. But what kept me going is that I wanted to quit Times, and I'd already started buying, and I wanted to do something with the arts, but it was not about starting a gallery. I think I'm still very averse to being one, because a gallery and an auction house is a commercial institution. So I don't think I looked at art from that lens. I looked at it as more as something that I enjoy, and that I wanted to be surrounded by. And I guess because I didn't go to art school, what I realized when I was taken on a trip to Baroda, where I saw many artist studios, I came back and I wondered, where are they in Bombay? And I realized there are none. I mean, they're not in the city, at least. Even now in the city, as a community studio space, I'm the only one. And before me, there was one which was pretty much 40 years ago by Bullabhai Desai Road. So Bullabhai
No.
Desai from Madhuri Bain used to run a studio called Bullabhai Memorial Studios. So after Bullabhai Memorial Studio, which is only a studio place, not a residency. Residency is where you live as well. I'm the second person in the city, to have
Wow.
started. So yeah, so it was a big thing to start. And as you know, I mean, what real estate means in South Bombay,
Sure.
and what this is about. So I feel like as someone who started this space so early on, I never realized what I had started till I actually started it. And
So
once
what is Space 118? So what do you guys do there? So I have had the fortune of visiting beautiful space.
artists, so we give studios to artists to work in. I mean, these are rooms. Studio is essentially a room which you work in, and they're given for anything between 6 months to 3 months. And then we give residencies where you live as well. So both studios and residencies, and there's a whole programming around it. I mean, once an artist comes in, there are icebreaker sessions where they introduce their practice to each other. Then there is also, uh, the tours done of the galleries in. Then there is a
I think there's a slight disruption in the internet. Saloni, if you can hear me, there's a slight connection issue. I think guys, Saloni is just gonna fix her connection and come back. Learning a lot about the art world here, curation, valuation, how artists think, how collectors think, galleries versus auction houses, how, as the uninitiated, do you value art? How do you pick a piece of art? What do you see when you see a piece of art? I mean, this is just absolutely fascinating. So much detailing and so many aspects to think about when you're trying to evaluate what piece of art to purchase. And what seemingly seems like a fairly simplistic career from the outside, it seems like there's so many layers to it. Of course, like many things in life, and like most of our guests have expressed, it's all about passion, right? Like I think this is episode number 30, and in every episode, the resounding message I'm hearing is you've got to be passionate about whatever it is that you choose. Having spent 7 years in media, having got 2 postgraduate degrees in media, she chose to switch careers and work in the space, right? So clearly, it's passion that sort of presides over anything else in life. All practicality sort of takes a backseat. Okay, there we are. All right,
Yeah.
much clearer. Thank you.
So I was saying, sorry, I was saying that, yeah, so we give, and there's a whole programming around it. When the artist comes, there are icebreaker sessions where they introduce their practice to each other. Then they're told about all the galleries, talks, etc., that are happening in the city, the exposed markets, etc., where they learn about material. They also are exposed to the areas in Bombay. It's not easy to understand Bombay so quickly, when you come into the city. And then there is, we have, what is most important is the mentorship session. The mentorship session is when a senior artist comes and critiques or, engages with the artist in the studio about their work. And lastly, we open up the studios to the public, where we have open studio days, where we introduce the public to practices of younger artists, and what they're making in the studio. So that's why it's called Open Studio Day, where you literally open out the studios to the public. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually, you've been kind enough to invite me to the open studio, and the kind of
Yeah.
work that your artist had put up on display is mind-boggling. It's better than an artwork I've seen in the galleries around Bombay. So you
Yeah. So
honestly
I
picked
think
the
that
best.
I've exposed the publics to, what actually a studio practice looks like. I mean, we only see art in galleries. We never see them in the making or in the studio. And that for me was very exciting. And I think personally, I think my own journey with it was more important to me. So, and then, it sort of passes on to the others.
Sure. Absolutely pioneering work there, Saloni, in the space of art residencies here in India. Want to touch a little bit upon the workshops that you organize with these artists. I remember Space 118 was doing a series of workshops. So you could just talk a little bit about that and how that sort of fit into your residency.
You know, I started organizing workshops a few months into, my practice when I started the studios. And the reason why I started them is because I felt like the city wanted to engage with the studios in a way which was a lot more than, just simply coming for an open studio day. So I felt like I myself wanted to be surrounded by the making of the art, right? And not just buying art. And that's when I started organizing art workshops by art professionals who actually taught that particular subject, whether it's raku pottery or ceramics or printmaking, various kinds of printmaking, photography. We had about 70-80 workshops
Yeah,
at Space, and there was a
absolutely.
whole range of it, and screen printing, shibori, you name it, and we did a lot of work around it. So yeah,
Okay,
that was a
terrific.
fun time. It was more to engage the external public with what was happening at Space.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fabulous forum. As an outsider,
Yeah,
to the art world, you really just welcomed all of us into your residency and into the mind of these artists. It was seriously an experience to interact with all your artists when you had invited us. So, and it was great for them also to get a touch point into just regular citizens who don't understand
yeah,
art.
correct. I mean, that was the point. Yeah.
Okay, just to get a sense, like how many artists have sort of gone through your residency, and where in the world do they come from? Like, which countries have you seen? Where do they find you? How do you find them? Like, what is that whole process about?
We've had in 11 years over 450 artists who've come and lived
Wow.
and worked with us. Where do they find us? So we are in India. I mean, it's a small community. A large part of it is from Baroda, Maharaja Sayajirao University, which is one of the best art schools in the country. Unfortunately, not many from JJ, which is literally in the backyard. But JJ, MSU, Shishti, schools from Mysore, Tamil Nadu, it's like, one person graduates and then they tell the other. So it's pretty much word of mouth in India. For international artists, we are on websites for this, which is like Res Artists and Residency Unlimited. So we usually register on that, and then that's where international artists find out about us. But it's not, I mean, it's not been difficult. I can't tell from which continents people have come. I mean, we definitely have had people from America, Europe, Africa, China, Taipei. Um, so yes, we've had the whole gamut. Initially, the residency and space was started only for Indian artists. It was only within about 2 years into starting it that I actually opened it up for international artists too. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, 450 artists in 11 years. That's a
Yeah.
phenomenal run.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay. Uh, what is the point of the residency? Why have you started? Is this for you a platform to encourage artists? Is there a commercial angle to it? Like, from a business perspective, what is the commerce behind the art?
A residency, in any residency in India, which is what I'm, I mean, in our country, we do not have any support for the arts. The government doesn't support the arts. The private sector usually support their own initiatives as a part of their own CSR. And so if you have to do anything in the arts, it's usually you have to pay for it yourself. Now, while you can do it for several years, you can't do it forever. I mean, to give, I mean, 2,000 square feet of land in Bombay to anybody, nobody would do that, right? So, and definitely free of cost, nobody would do it. So, what I mean is, I have to, most residencies don't have to think of it in this way. But for Bombay based residencies, it's even tougher because rental or electricity or regular running of a space is very expensive. And that's why I feel it was important. So when we did a did the residency, I didn't think of so much, but we did take one work in return from every artist who worked in the residency, and we would sell it as part of the collection. Every year we would do an auction with actually a very reputed international auction house for not-for-profits and benefits called Paddle 8. So for almost 4 years, not back to back, but consecutively, I have done auctions of the Space 118 collection as fundraisers with Paddle8, who actually only support not-for-profits and benefits. So that's something that's been beneficial. But and sometimes we would rent out the studios long term to artists from Bombay who do not want to stay for a short while. They want to just take it forever. So that was another way of keeping the program going. But other than that, it's difficult. It's difficult to run residencies. I mean, artists run residencies which are started by artists and are run by artists typically die faster and earlier because either they're not good at administration or they do not simply have the funds to run it. And that could be a huge issue. So I think it's very important to know where your corpus is going to come from and where you're going to run it and how you're going to run it. So typically, fundraisers are the way forward for a space like ours.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I want to touch a little bit upon the beautiful piece of art you have behind you. It's, as you know, it's one of my favorite pieces of art in your house.
Yeah, you made me sit here.
Yeah. So where did this come from? What's the backstory?
Well, this is from I mean, it's from one of the Space 118 artists. I had got it many years ago, but this is not a work she made in the residency. It's something she made much later. Her name is Tanya Goel. She worked at Space 118, I think, in 2012-13, and I started the space in 2009. She had come for 3 months, and she had just come back from Yale. She's one of the rare few artists from our country who's not only studied in art in Baroda, she did her BFA and MFA there, but she also went to Art Institute Chicago and then transferred her master's to Yale University as well, which has one of the best departments for art and painting particularly. So she studied there and then she came back to India, and she's based out of Delhi, and she had come from my residency. Tanya's work is a lot about color, and it's a lot about light, and how light interacts with color and various pigments, and how she makes her paintings from materiality that she finds in different spaces, and sort of mix those materials as pigments into her color, and makes a different kind of pigment that comes out of it. And I mean, her practice has evolved a lot from this work to, or rather, the work she started making at my space, which was very Rothko-like, from that to this to what she's making now. I think, the work has evolved a lot, and it's sort of fragmented and, taken its own direction. So, yeah, there are many Space 118 artists who started out young and fresh at space, and today have become mid-career artists. I can't say they've become senior, but many of them have become mid-career artists, and that's a very good feeling. Yeah.
I find it so endearing how when you're talking about the artists, it's like you're talking about a family member. You know their journey, you know their talent, like their backgrounds. I mean, it's just amazing. You're talking about it with this warmth and compassion. Like it's actually like you're talking about like a sibling and sharing the journey. It's adorable. I know you do beyond just the residency in terms of supporting artists. Maybe talk a little bit about that. The shows that you do. How do you sort of promote these artists? You've done the 10-year celebration of Space 118. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and how did that sort of culminate?
Yeah, so I think this passion of mine sort of obviously was recognized by others, and Geeta Mehra of Sakshi Gallery, who's been one of the oldest galleries in the contemporary art space in Bombay, or rather India. One of the oldest, asked me to do, she said, I want to celebrate 10 years of Space 118. And I said, oh, is it? And how would you want to do that? And she said, I want to do a show, and why don't you curate it? So I said, okay, I'll curate a show of artists from Space 118 who have done well and whose practices I still follow and know very well. Tanya is one of them. And I said, okay, fine. So I did a show. I curated my first show of 33 artists called Making Space, which is a 10-year celebration of Space 118. And I called it Making Space because I really feel that's what the residency did. It made space for artists in the city, which otherwise
Wow.
nobody would. And this year she asked me to curate another show. Actually, it came out of an Instagram post of mine in the beginning of lockdown where um, um, I posted 20 artists to watch out for in 2020. And these were again artists who I was following, whose studios I'd been to, many of them, not all, whose practices I knew and was familiar with. And I just felt like, in the beginning of the lockdown, that there's nothing to do. We're also addicted to social media. And
Sure.
let's do something that is different. And I just posted 20 artists to watch out for in 2020. And she said, why don't we convert it into a show? And I said, sure. And that happened. My post was in March. I approached the artist, and all this conversation happened in May, and the show was in October. I mean, in September, October now. Sorry, October, November now. And yeah, I've had a very good run with it.
Okay, and I know that the 10-year anniversary celebration was sold out. So
So
clearly
is
there's
this one.
so is this one. Okay, awesome, terrific. So the artists are terrific to have found you as you are to have found them. So you want to touch a little bit about from the conversation. What I'm understanding is the art lies at the sort of intersection of creativity for you, sort of nurturing the artists from a creative perspective, and the commercial angle behind is this even a viable business, and sort of the passion you have for this space. So is passion, creativity, and commerce, are these sort of three parallel lines, or do you see them intersecting?
A gallery, like I said, a gallery and an auction house are commercial institutions. What I run is more or less a not-for-profit. It's not more or less, it is a not-for-profit. And it is very, but even not-for-profits are profitable. So I mean, it's not like if you run a not-for-profit you are literally like living off the road, or don't get a salary, or cannot afford things. I mean, you are enabling others' lives, whatever not-for-profit you run, whether it's a shelter for animals, or old age home, or whatever. I mean, every not-for-profit has to find some way of making money to
So
support
you're
that.
registered as a not-for-profit.
Yeah. So to
Okay.
support, we're not registered as a not-for-profit, but we function like one.
Okay.
So I feel like most residencies are registered. I didn't want to get into the, because
Sure.
there's a lot of compliances when you are registered as one. But we function as one. And the thing is, when you do that, I feel like you have to understand how to make sense out of it, because otherwise you would not be able to run it on a day-to-day basis. So like I said, in the art world we typically have to do fundraisers
Okay.
for making ends meet in. And yes, I mean, you have to make commercial sense, otherwise you will not exist at all. You will be non-existent. So I think to have run a residency space in Bombay for the last 10 years, and having continued it with a single-handed, dogged determination, is what Geeta Mehra saw in me and wanted to congratulate me, and hence, give me the show last year. Yeah, and it's been a great journey into getting into curating art and putting up curatorial shows.
So, along the same lines, after the show, I remember we spoke about, about a year ago, and you talked to me about your book. Very fascinating. If you're okay with sharing with the audience a little bit about your book, where the idea came from, and what is the book about?
So, the book, like I said, when I started, I didn't know what I had started. There really isn't any history to this beyond the Bullabai Memorial Studios. And I remember when someone came to my space, Saloni Doshi and Firoza Godrej had come once, and they said that this reminds us of the Bullabai Desai Studios. I didn't know what they meant. So I had to Google it. And when I Googled it, I realized that there are many studios and residencies that exist in this country that I do not know of. And there are many people who want to start studios and residencies like me, but we don't have we have an oral history in this country. We don't really have too much of a written history. And this is still an unorganized sector. Apart from auction houses giving prices, we do not really have much text on many of our, I mean, now we do, but earlier we did, and for residencies, there is nothing. There is no place you can look at one go where what has happened in this country, in this place of residencies. And they're such an important backbone in this country. They are the space where an artist goes to between college and getting a gallery, rather,
Sure.
so it's like going to your, we're like an incubator pretty much, and that's where an artist gets many a times a push into their career, understands. Many artists go to many residencies before they actually make it to a gallery, or in the official
Is the
art
book
world.
going to talk about your
Yeah,
journey
so
at
it's going
Space
to
One?
talk about this. Yeah, it's not only
Okay.
Space 118. There are 50 residencies that have existed in this country. We're one of them. And it's going to talk about all of them, their histories, and how they
Oh,
started. Many of them who've shut down, and everything behind you will know everything about residencies in this country when you read this book. And it's written in a very easy way, where it's easy to understand, etc. So it's not like something which is more
okay.
textbookish.
So, guys, for everyone listening, please do follow Saloni on Instagram at Saloni Doshi and Space
Saloni
118.
K. Doshi.
Saloni K. Doshi and Space 118. They're both very active Instagram handles. Of course, she'll be releasing primers on her book on her channels. Saloni, I want to segue a little bit into the careers that one can think about when they want to explore art. Because in your individual capacity, you have been a collector, a curator, a patron, run the residency. You've worn many hats. What are some of the hats that you haven't explored that someone could potentially think of as a potential career in the arts?
I feel, I mean, normally, like, I was telling you this before, that one doesn't grow up thinking they'll be a cricketer, right? You'll be considered lunatic if you thought of that, especially if you came from a professional background, if your parents were professionals, or if your parents were, if you're from a business family. You can't just wake up and say, I want to paint, or you can't wake up and say, I want to. So don't think of art as just a, traditional way of, oh, you either have to be a painter, or you have to be a seller, or you have to be an auction house. You do not have to be anything. There are many things in between, which is curating, which is writing for the arts, which is starting art publishing, which is, I mean, there are professions that one can look at beyond these traditional, this thing. And I feel there is so much more. Today, I mean, you can be an art influencer, by just posting on Instagram and collating data and putting it up. So I think
So,
there's a lot that you can do. um, I mean, making art is one of them, but you have to create your identity within the art world, or rather any world. So I think you can look at other professions. Maybe you can look at sourcing art. You can look at helping in working in a museum as a museologist. You can work as a program manager. There are many things. So there are many administrative jobs in the arts as well. So I feel like you can do conservation, which is when you treat paintings that are damaged. So there's conservationists are very important and a very integral part of the art world. So that you can do many things. It's just that you have to, I mean, like I said, it's a passion run business. So you have to know this, and you have to keep seeing what, if you like it from day one, then you sort of start exploring other avenues as to what you can do within it. So if I
oh,
had said, oh, I mean, I can't be an artist, so now I don't need to be in the art world, that's not it. I mean, there are many things you can do. You just have to explore those opportunities and see what suits you best.
okay, great. That's very encouraging. So, guys, for anyone who's interested in the arts but doesn't have the flair for painting or actually creating art, as Saloni mentioned, there's several avenues to explore, and seems like they're all legitimate sort of careers. They're not all purely passion plays. These are actual needs of the
Yeah,
industry, and
yeah.
and there are careers to be found here. Saloni, few closing words from you. Where do you see the art world going? Has the pandemic so severely affected this that are we seeing a slump? what is the next sort of the immediate sort of year or two looking like, and where do you see the next 5 years, 10 years evolving to?
I mean, this pandemic personally for me has been the best thing ever. I think commercially, the two things that have done very well. One is the art that people know that they want the best works of, which is the established masters. So, like they say, good art always sells, and in the worst of times like this, everything that's good will sell, and it will sell at whatever prices you want it to sell. Whereas on the flip side, everything that's young and inexpensive and easy to afford is also doing really well. So I don't know, I think what the pandemic has hit is a certain range of artists and a certain kind. But I mean, I think like with things getting back into order, with the lockdowns opening, things are changing, and people are changing. Don't forget, at the end of the day, you are tied to your house, and people do want to see beautiful things around them. If you're going to be at home the whole day, you do not want to see boring walls. So I think a lot of people have bought art, to even art, plants, beautiful things, just to be around them, because you're at home most of the time, or there is somebody at home most of the time. So I think that's I think it's only helped, and online has become very important. Instagram, Facebook, just websites, a lot of initiatives that the art world itself has made. In fact, I've given many interviews on this in this whole lockdown as to does online buying help. And I always keep saying, yes, it does, because at the end of the day, I have not only bought art from Bombay after going to the gallery. I've been buying art from New York, London, LA, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, everywhere. I talk to people from everywhere, and I buy art from everywhere. How do I see it? I'm not flying every day to see every work I buy. So we have been doing video calls, we have been getting PDFs, we have been doing all this for a long time. I mean, the
Okay,
pandemic is
so
nothing new.
the pandemic has not really sort of affected anything. You're
I
seeing a
mean,
trend
it's not
to the right.
affected ways of buying. I have to say that way. We
Okay,
were used
great.
to ways. I mean, any collector in the art world would definitely couldn't have seen every single work in their collection before they bought it. Yeah. You would buy on image or PDF.
Okay, just going to read out a couple of comments here. But why Preeti says, great effort, Saloni. More power to you. Thank you. But why Preeti? Chris and for informative session on various options related to the art world. All right. Thank you, Chris, and for that comment. Saloni, just as we are ending the show, um, just a few thoughts, at the top of your mind, if you had to think of two or three trends you see, in the art world in the next 5-10 years. Where do you see the art world evolving to? Is anything coming to your mind?
The art world globally, I think, is $45 billion or 65. I'm not sure. I'm not so much into this. It's only in this lockdown that I actually understood that art is important. I feel the arts and the culture, we are a country that is very rich with our own arts and culture. We are a country that takes our art and culture for granted. We are a country where the West has recognized what we have more than we have recognized it ourselves. And I feel those notions and that pattern is changing. There is a growth in Indian collectors, and there's a growth in people realizing our own heritage and putting it out there. I feel there's a lot, there's only positive things and a lot of growth in the art world. I think we have, I mean, I don't think personally, I mean, you go through ups and downs in any industry, and I'm sure there is one in this one too. But I feel in terms of I mean, from where we started, which is like a few people buying art and supporting art and patronage, I feel that circle of people is only growing every year. And people
Sure.
are excited about art. I think people are also, there are a lot of young people who also want, don't look at it in terms of, and, are not intrigued by it. They are curious and have found ways of, doing more research and figuring out, art. It's no longer something that, oh my God, I don't have money to buy art, so I can't buy art. It's also no
Yeah.
longer something that's inaccessible. I think art with the India Art Fair, the Kochi Biennial have become, accessible, and people are making efforts to, listen to talks, etc., to understand it. And yeah, I think more and more people are getting into it. It may not be a
Yeah.
lifestyle for most, but it's also aspirational to have good art in your house. I mean, if you go
Yeah.
and buy a beautiful house, a lot of people start like that. They start as buying art for their house, and then they'll end up becoming collectors for a museum. And that's how Kiran Nada's journey was. If you hear
Yeah.
her initial talks, she says that she started buying, for her house, and then she's landed up building a museum. And there are many private collectors today who are building museums, so
Okay.
you're not
Terrific.
born. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And it's going to read our last compliment here from Kothari Sanjay, who says, Saloni, you have a lovely piece of art behind you. Sanjay, if you didn't see the rest of the conversation, it will be up on Instagram very soon. And she has talked a little bit about that piece of art work specifically, and a lot more. Saloni, thank you so much for this session. Thank you for making art accessible to all of us. And thank you for showing us the beauty behind you and within you, because that's what really shone through this conversation. So my heartfelt gratitude to you, Saloni, and wish you all the best. And thank you for all the work on behalf of all the artists that you have helped, supported, and showered your love on. Congratulations on building what you have built. And I know that the sky's the limit for you, Saloni. So waiting to see what you have up your sleeve next. Thank you once again.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Ibu. Thank you.
Thank you. You could just exit out of the chat if you just. All right, guys, thank you for this. And that was episode 30 of House of Experts. Believe it or not, have a fantastic guest coming up on the show next week. So stay tuned. And this was fabulous. Learned so much about the art space. Every session, I started on this journey to help others get educated about different careers, but I feel enriched at the end of every session. This was really an eye-opening session. And for all those who missed it or joined in late, please definitely play back the entire conversation. It's going to be on Instagram, on our website, reachiv.com. There's a tab that says House of Experts, and all the episodes are there. It's on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify, Ghana, and Apple in terms of a podcast. So whatever be your medium, whatever be your chosen platform, we've tried to synthesize these conversations and put them out for you. Have a great evening, guys. Thank you for joining, and stay tuned for next week's guests. Have a good evening.